I'd like to tell you, I'll just take a minute to point out some folks that are here. Before I do that, I gotta tell you guys that you always wonder, do people really like you? Well, I figured out how to find that out. You threaten to close the door. People come out of the woodwork and tell you how much they love your park, and that means a lot to me. A lot of my staff are back here. I see Rob Hammond, the mayor of Mentone, is back there. He's been a big friend of ours. Jimmy Durham sitting next to him from down in the county in Fort Payne, and he does a lot of stuff. Y'all probably don't have an idea what he does, and it's always good. I see Mr. Harcrow back there, the president of the county commission. I can pick up the phone and call those guys, and they've always helped us. It's cool being a state park. It really is. Who else am I missing here? John Dersham, who's our CEO of our tourism. When he reports a growth in tourism, it's generally because he's out there beating the bushes and making sure people know what's going on, not only at the park, but the entire county. Then he stretches out and he's on now, I think, every board, and he's the president of every tourism place around here, so he's out there quite a bit. And then I also look around and I see a lot of my customers. I see a lot of my neighbors here. I see a lot of the folks. This is home for me, so this is really overwhelming for me to throw together a press conference and have all you guys here, so I definitely appreciate it. We even have made-up groups here, the Mentone Men's Club. They're here every Thursday morning to eat breakfast with us. And before I go on, I want to point out a young man here in the back, Josh Hughes, who's the assistant superintendent. He does all the hard stuff here so I can play and have a good time. He's currently running the lodge, and he's doing an exceptional job here. There are the Sugars back there. They, before all this started, they called me and they said, Ken, we want to paint a building for you. We want to paint the building at DeSoto Falls. And I'm like, what? You want to do what? So when somebody calls me and says, we want to paint a building for you, I go buy the paint and I get everything for them. So we appreciate the fact that you guys would volunteer like that. Anybody else want to paint a building? Give me a call. So why are we here this morning? Well, it's pretty simple. That there's been a lot of things out there in the media and stuff released out that we've got some hardships and we've got some challenges going on with trying to maintain our state parks. And so I'm driving down the road and my cell phone rings, and it's a number, and there's no caller ID on it, so I'm not sure who it is. And I took a chance and I answered it and said, "Hey Ken, this is Nathaniel. Representative Ledbetter, how can I help you?" And then I go around the rock and the phone cuts off. So I got back in touch with him and had a nice conversation with our representative, and he says, "Hang on just a minute, I'm going to hand you over to Steve Livingston." "Oh, Senator Livingston." You know, you kind of sit up straight when these guys call, but it meant a lot to me that they would personally call me to tell me what they're about to tell y'all is, Ken, we're not going to let this happen. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you're about to share with us.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that very much.
Yes, sir.
You know, as we got a call last week, as this orchestrated, I was on the Senate chambers and on the floor, and Nathaniel came upstairs with the telephone. And he said, "We need to talk real quick." There's a release out that there's going to be, what, 15 or 22 state parks closed if we don't raise revenue at this point in time. Folks, in all honesty, the House hasn't taken up the general fund budget yet. They haven't started. I think y'all start Wednesday, right, Nathaniel?
Yeah, we've had a couple of conversations about it, and we've talked about it in some committee meetings, but as far as really approaching the budget, we know there's a problem with the shortfall, but Wednesday is when we're really going to start tackling it. So for anything to come out now is premature, first of all. You know, there is some issues with the state budget. You know, I think one of the things Steve and I talked about earlier was the fact that the first we knew about this is when the director of the park sent out a mass media release saying what was going to happen, which some of you've seen, about closing of the parks. And I don't think that's the route to take. You know, it should have come through us and let us work the process and, you and make sure we can fit all the pages together. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not for raising $700 million in taxes. There's other ways to solve this problem. You know, I'm not saying that there may not be some revenue enhancements, but it certainly don't need to be $700 million. And the thing about it is, the parks play a small part of that. And you know, if you look at the numbers, of course, they're going to say a lot of different numbers, but I think about $32 million, $36 million is what the state parks, that's what, 36 is what we give them for their budget. The proposal, all it was put out was said, if we keep the exact money that we've got, we will have to have an 11.5% decrease, 11.5%. Well, you know, if it's off of 36 million, that's about 3.5 million, which, from my understanding, you know, the revenue should be better this year if we have a better season. Last year wasn't a good weather season for the parks. Of course, some areas were cut deeper, and the parks were probably one of those areas. But the thing was, it was across the board, 11.5%. But we wanted people to know. Steve and I had talked several different times about this, so, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. We won't come tell you what's happening. And I think you deserve the right to know, first of all. And of course, Steve and I inherited this. You know, we were newly elected, both of us are freshmen. And we come in the first day and said, we need $700 million, you know. So that's one thing we're working through. But to tell you, main thing I think is to tell you that the process hadn't started yet. And to say there's going to be any budget cuts anywhere is premature. And I can be the first one to tell you. And you can count on this. If they try to cut this park out, they won't never get through the section because I'm going to filibuster the whole thing.
In actuality, the process begins with the governor presenting his budget to the House of Representatives. Revenue-raising measures originated in the House of Representatives, excuse me. So on March 3rd, he had out his big tax proposal of what's going to happen. That's the first we've seen of any budget numbers. He's talking about a $700 million increase, or there's a lot of numbers out there, but 700 is what he's overall after. So they're going to take it up this week. They've got most of Wednesday dedicated, their committee meetings dedicated, taking up ideas on how to do different things in the state budget, the general fund budget. To give you a little more history, Stephen, just the other day I was talking with a gentleman from the press, and he said, this is nothing new. I've been covering the State House since 1974. I said, we've had this problem since 1974. So general fund's always been in trouble. The problem is we have no growth money in the general fund budget. All the growth money is in the education trust fund budget, which brings back to the fact that we have two budgets. We're one of 3 states in the country that have 2 budgets. So if you got a car problem with your car, Paula, and you got a problem with your house, Stephen, and you can't move money from the car to fix the roofs leaking on the house, and that's kind of where we are right now. So we've got some opportunities in front of us there. There's a lot of talk about unearmarking money. Our total budget is going to be about $26.8 or $28.6 billion. Now, of that $28.6 billion, all but $1.7 billion is earmarked. It was earmarked by us as voters for different things. A lot of it's education, a lot of it's roadways. But, you know, most of that was done by constitutional amendment, so it'd be very tough to unearmark any of that money. There is some of that money that is earmarked that is done by statute that we're looking at to see if it's something we can unearmark that money and bring into the budget. But, you know, out of that $26 billion, we only have discretion with like $1.7 billion in the House and in the Senate. We've got a couple of big monkeys in the room coming up. You know, we got prison reform, where if we don't do something with prisons, the federal government's going to take over. And we've got Medicaid to some capacity that grows on its own by about $100 million a year. So we've got, there are 800-pound gorillas in the room, so we've got some challenges there. But for the state parks to come out and say they're going to close DeSoto in June when they're budgeted through October 1st, these guys, they had a shock to their families, and they took a really hard punch there, and they shouldn't have done that to them. There's money in place, and even if the allocated money they proposed for next year, it runs them through 7 or 8 months.
You know, the thing about that, as all of us, we can all tell stories about the park. You know, my wife was telling me earlier her uncle was once the park ranger here, and how they cleaned the cabins growing up. I mean, this is You know, we used to bring our kids to this park, you know, when they was growing up. And it means so much to this community, and I'm amazed. We decided to do this on Saturday afternoon. We sent out one email, basically, on Facebook, and Keisha called me. And look here, I mean, y'all are to be commended, because y'all love this park just as much as we do. And we're the ones that should be applauding y'all.
Absolutely.
To come and support this park. You know, the thing about it is, it doesn't make business sense, first of all. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Steve and I are both businessmen, and we've been involved in business for a long time. You don't cut your money cow out. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I was on the phone, of course, I've been on the phone this morning early with a lot of folks, but I was on the phone early with John Durson, which is our Tourism Association Director in DeKalb County, and he's here today, and thank you, John, and does a tremendous job. I had the opportunity to serve with him on that board for a few years, so I know what he does. In DeKalb County, last year, I want you to listen to these numbers. DeKalb County last year, tourism brought in over $71 million. $71 million. So we're talking about a budget here that's, I don't know what the budget is, Ken can tell us. But off of that $71 million that we took into DeKalb County, guess what? Guess what the #1 attraction for tourism is in DeKalb County? DeSoto State Park. Yeah. From a business standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. You know, if we're going to be fiscally responsible with your money and make good business decisions based on what the numbers are, to say that you're going to close a park down, or any park at this point in the state of Alabama, when last year tourism brought $11.8 billion into Alabama. Tourism, think about that. The state park probably generated a large majority of that. You know, so we didn't think this was through.
John, I think you said that it represented right at a 5% increase over last year, and you're missing two of your big items with Sequoia and Mentone Springs.
Right. The interesting thing about tourism is we've had perpetual growth through the recession. What other industry in the state has enjoyed that? So when other things are not growing, people love to come to Alabama. They love it. $11.8 billion worth of loving it. And DeKalb County has a real high percentage of return customers, because people get here and they really love it, so they come year after year after year, perpetuated by this very park. This is a significant destination marketing destination for DeKalb County. Now, people will go out from it and they'll shop. They'll buy food, they'll buy gas, they'll go to other attractions. They'll go to Little River Canyon, which is not collecting money, but it's a part of the formula of what makes people come to DeKalb County and why they love it. So, you know, you take away DeSoto State Park, and we've lost our capital in destination marketing. Just one thing. People come to the park and they go to Mentone. They spend money shopping and eating Mentone. I mean, they rent cabins because of DeSoto State Park. Take them and hike and enjoy themselves. So it is an economic developer, and it perpetuates itself through all the visitors we get here that come and enjoy themselves. So thank everybody for being here and supporting this, because I know all of you love this park.
Thank you, John. You know, it's really odd. They had DeSoto and they had Guntersville State Park. Both Nathaniel and I had the opportunity to be in Guntersville today with the governor. We chose to come here. But it's really quite odd that they've entered into adventures or public-private partnerships in both Guntersville and here for aerial adventures and mountain biking, and then all of a sudden on June 1st they're going to close them. What kind of message do you send to your partner? It makes no sense whatsoever.
There are different plans. I will tell you that, and I'm not going into details with it, but me and Steve has talked about them. There's 3 or 4 proposals about taking the money and putting them in the park. And none of the plans that we talked about includes a tax increase. You know, as a business owner, I can tell you last year, overlooking at we've spent over 47% of our money either on taxes or licenses or, some type of fee. I don't think we can, the economy in Alabama is just starting to grow. And to put that kind of tax burden on the state, I think would hinder our growth. There's other ways to do this. You know, like Steve had talked about earlier, 91% of everything we take in is earmarked. Now, part of that's by constitution, and part of it's not. I think it's time that we unearmark some money. You know, move some of it around and put it where it needs to be. That's one thing. And then there's other items on the table we can do. There's been a couple of proposals that's been brought up, so we'll look at all that. Like I said, the process is just starting, and it's way premature to say anything's going to be cut out or taken out. And we talked about the engine, economic engine that this park is. There's no question about it. We hear the numbers, and you talk about the statewide numbers for all the state parks and how much of an influx that brings into our state. It's just not a good business decision, period.
And think about the state parks statewide, what they do. There are probably some that do lose money. There's no question about it. But it's not designed to be a business. It's not designed to be a business. So now, I urge you all to be patient and let the process work through. I think when the outcome is all said and done, we may not be happy where we are, but we'll be in a lot better shape than it is proposed. Is that a good word?
That's a good word.
A lot better shape than proposed. It is a process, and we're just on day 16 of a process in the morning. So allow us the opportunity to do that. And if you've got concerns or questions, you know, I'll be happy to provide my phone number and email address to you. And I know Nathaniel will also. I think you'll all, in long term, will be very content with what the outcome is. This is not just state parks. This is Aaliyah. You got the same thing. You got the mental health situation with the same prisons. All of them are doing that. They've done it. It's almost like a scare tactic. It reminds me, excuse me, very much of when the national parks were closed, when the federal government closed down. Right. Like came out of page 22, line 4. Let's go shut everything down.
You know, one thing I think that we wanted to iterate today, more than anything else, that we're going to fight for this park. You know, and we're going to be here. You know, y'all put us here, and I'm humbled by that. And I know I see a lot of familiar faces in here, and I appreciate that. And I think that you expect us to fight for this park. And that's what we're here today to tell you. We're going to do that.
I agree, and you know, we're all blessed to have the opportunity to live up here in God's country. We just had this conversation earlier today, and this is truly God's country. So.
I'm telling Steve, had an interesting conversation, and I know the media might want to ask some questions. But, one of the ladies that lives in Baldwin County, she told me, said, I got the prettiest part of the state. I said, you're wrong, I got the prettiest part of the state. Well, lo and behold, a week later, the report comes out, and 2 communities in my district were on the top 10. I told her, I said, I told you so. We got the prettiest part of the state.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all so much. I am amazed off of one Facebook post that we get this kind of turnout.
Absolutely.
Ken, I want to tell you something. I appreciate what you're doing here at this park. You're to be commended, you and your staff.
I appreciate you mentioning me by name, but I couldn't do it without the awesome staff that I do.
Let your staff stand up so everybody can see a face. So I think
sure, and there's someone from almost every department here.
Thank you for everything you do.
I would like to remind everybody, since our friends with the media are here, that if people keep asking me what they can do, and you're doing it, and these guys are here telling you what they're fighting for, but I want to remind everybody that we're still open. We're still here. We're still taking reservations. We have to consider and think about what's going to happen, but as far as we're working now, we're working that we're open. So keep coming. Keep using the park. That's the biggest thing you can do to help me at this point. Is just keep coming, keep hiking, keep biking, keep doing the things that you're doing here and all the other state parks. I'd rather you come here, but there are 21 other state parks.
You were trying to ask a question, ma'am.
Well, I was trying to make a statement.
Okay.
And it might be really unpopular, but you can raise my taxes to save this park.
Yeah.
I started to say a little while ago when John was talking about coming up and doing all their shopping and banking, I started saying, and they drive across the state line and buy lottery tickets.
Anybody from the media got any questions? I guess.
This thing's ever evolving. I liken this budget process to a chess game where the board is moving and the pawns and the kings and all of them on top of the board are all moving when they're their own. So a couple of days ago, I had dinner with some friends that are politically savvy in Montgomery that I've known for a number of years, and they told me that night that I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see the lottery become a player in this. And lo and behold, if I don't wake up on the next morning and Representative Steve Kloss, who is chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, signed on to the lottery bill. So this thing's ever evolving. So let's just get it its due and let it work its way through and go through the process. So.
And we hadn't just this week we've reached the halfway point of the session, so you can see how early it is. And it speaks volumes for you to show up and be here and support this park. It really does. And I know it means as much to you as it does my family and to us. So we thank you for that. I know you took time out of busy schedules to be here. Thank you.
I live right over there, right through those trees. We're jutted into the state park. Well, I'm getting emotional. There's a lot of kids in Fort Payne that are being raised by grandparents, and a lot of them that use the state park and they hike these trails, and a lot of them end up at my house, and the first thing they talk about is, let's go to the park. Ken went to the classroom and spoke to a bunch of the kids at the high school, and the number of those kids that use the state park, and it's even the ones that I don't know. So this park offers more than just right here, even out to the states. It's the community in Fort Payne, in Mentone, even in Valley Head and Rainsville, that there's a lot of kids that could possibly go down the wrong road, but they lean on this state park for the nature center, for the things that they do here, for these hiking trails, the pool, everything. And I'm just going to hold it that it's all going to work out.
Thank you. It will. Anybody else?
We've got a rolling reserve fund, rainy day fund, budget stabilization fund. Is all that earmarked?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that what you're talking about trying to get into?
Some of it, all that's earmarked within the state education trust fund budget, yes, sir. So, but there's some of that money that's out there that goes into different places, and it's, we got a constitution that's way too thick, and I'm sorry, being in my 15th day down there, I hadn't learned it all yet, so working on that, but yeah.
I live on the other end of the mountain. It used to be the district here. Bucks Pocket.
Right.
That's a big part of us in that area.
Yes, sir.
That's where we have our recreation. That's where we go every weekend and through the week. So we're going to be looking out.
Did you imagine zip lining across DeSoto Canyon? How about zip lining across Bucks Pocket someday?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
There's a loser.
We don't think that sharks first of all, thanks for that. We can use sharks today. Whatever we can do, don't you hesitate to call on us, because we're just as committed to this as you.
Thank you.
And we're thankful for just this meeting today. It means a lot, and it shows just exactly where your mindset and attitude is. And it's sad that we haven't had that down there long. We have. So thank you.
Jim?
I know a lot of people don't know what all y'all have done already for DeKalb County as far as economic development. Looked like we were going to lose some incentive or competitiveness for the county. These guys stood up, they took care of it in Montgomery, and now we're as competitive as all the other counties. But when they say they're going to do something, they do it, they stand by it. I think it's the best representation we've had in Montgomery, and they look out after each one of us.
Yay!
You won't know everything
And I may speak speak for you two here, but you know, folks, we may not see things out there that affect you, and y'all see it. Please call us and let us know. Email us, please, because we won't know it unless you tell us.
I see some faces I've got some emails from, so keep sending them. Anybody else got anything? Larry?
If you do pass a lottery, earmark a big part of the money for the parks.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If it goes through, it may, you know, I'm not saying it.
Yeah. The thing about, Steve speak, I would speak, and of course, Larry used to be on city council for Pines, he knows what the budget issues are. The thing about the lottery, I'm gonna, you know, of course, I'm not a lottery person, I'll just be straightforward with you, but I'm not against you voting for it, and I would support you voting for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That doesn't mean I would vote for it, I'm just saying that you've got the right as citizens of Alabama, in my opinion, if that's what you want. And it does need to be, and there has been talk about putting it maybe, what's eating us right now is, as Steve had mentioned earlier, is Medicaid. I'll give you an interesting statistic. Last year, the state of Alabama spent $600 million on Medicaid. And 53% of every child in Alabama is on some kind of Medicaid. So it is continuously growing. And you know, so there has been some talk, Larry, that would supplement that, which would free up money for the state. We don't know that yet. We don't know how that would go. But I would say if the lottery does come to vote, then I'll be honest with you, at this time, I wouldn't be surprised if it would pass. That's just looking at numbers, but and it wouldn't generate as much as some people have told you. The numbers I've seen is around 100 million, something like that.
Numbers anywhere from 80 to 250, but I think the real number is about 100.
Yeah. But with that being said, that's still money that the state
That's
can use.
nothing to sneeze at, right?
But that's my stance on the lottery. You may, you know, the short version.
That's, you know, if you remember back when Governor Siegelman, I think it was 98, is that right? When he had this big format, organized push to pass the lottery back then. There just hadn't been any of that this time, so it's been very quiet, been laid back. The first inkling was last Thursday morning when I read the paper in Montgomery that Representative Klaus had signed on to the bill that was being sponsored by Craig Ford out of Gadsden to break the lottery. So.
I had an interesting conversation this morning with our auditor. He had emailed me over the weekend. It's related to state parks. He's got what I think is a very good plan. I don't want to get into it because it's just at the talking stage. But it wouldn't increase taxes, but it would offset what it would take to operate the state park, which I thought was very formidable of him to call and say, listen, if you want to carry this bill, this is something we can do. So I'm going to be meeting with him Wednesday to look at that proposal.
When do you vote on the budget? When's the final decision? What's the deadline?
We don't know yet. The Senate has just passed the education budget. So Alabama is just one of only 3 states in the country that's got 2 budgets. It's kind of like Steve said, you know, you may have enough money for your car over here, but your hose leak in your roof, and you can't take your car money and put it back to your hose. That's kind of where we're at in Alabama. And like I said, we're only one of 3 states in the country. We don't know at this time.
So there's no date when you have to have it, when there's no deadline?
Well, the deadline will be by the end of the session.
Which is when?
We've probably got the second week of June. We have 30, by law, we can meet 30 legislative days a year. Those are typically Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Wednesdays are committee meetings. And we have 105 days from when we start the session. So I think that was March 3rd, which puts us roughly mid-June that we have to finish that by. Now, technically, I don't think we're supposed to be able to do any business down there, but they've come up with this ingenious creation where we can do business while we're working on budgets down there and pass bills. That these are all done by prior folks, so we operate down there. I think the first thing we're supposed to do by law is pass budgets, but it always ends up being the last thing that happens.
Well, what could we do if all this negotiating goes on and then somehow we come up short for state parks? How are we going to know that, and what can we do?
Well, now mind you, this is for fiscal year 16 that starts October 1st. So you're dealing from June to October to have time to do that. He's talking about the packages that Auditor Ziegler is proposed. Senator Schofield and I have discussed, he's got 3 different bills that we're discussing of doing some things that'll reshore state parks in some capacities. There's some options out there.
There's just no guarantee.
No, well, let's see what the budget process does. You know, it may well be that Ken only gets cut 1% before it's all over with. He can probably live with 1%.
Well, I
Don't
don't
know
know,
that.
he deserves more.
And he's got guns. He does deserve more, I agree. But let's just see where the process takes us.
That's a very good question. The one thing I don't know if we've made clear of is the 15 budget goes through October the 1st. So all the state parks are fully funded until the last day of September happens at midnight or the first day of October, whatever before that. So even, and I will say that even with the money that has been projected for the state parks, it would carry it another 7 months. So it's got till October, and then with the projection, it could go 7 more months without anything out. So to do anything right now, I mean, you can see how that is premature. So I mean, that's pretty much what I've looked at.
I'm wondering why the director of parks made this release. I mean, does he work for the governor, or who does he work for?
For the governor, at the discretion of the governor.
Well, you're talking to us about your proposals. What do you suppose the governor is talking about in guns? See, I think you kind of aligned yourself at the same time he's talking in Gunnersville, and I would love to be hearing what he's saying.
You'll get to hear it tonight on TV.
I guess the media was there, weren't you guys?
Yeah. But I can tell you pretty much what it was, and that wasn't by design. I promise you, it just happened that way. And I don't have any. The governor, I respect this position. We won't always agree on everything. I'm saying I don't agree on the $700 million worth of taxes. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some revenue enhancement. We don't know where that's at yet. But you bring up a good point, and this had nothing to do with Governor Benton being in Gunnersville. I mean, it's just, my thing was, and I reached out to Steve, and the thing was, I had gotten innovated from all you people. Want to know what's going on with my park. And you hadn't been told the whole story. And now I think you should have a better idea of what's going on. As we said, this park can operate for almost another year without changing the revenue of that, because of it, and even with the cut, if it was 11% or however much it is, looking at the money. But yeah, but I'm just saying, let's work. And Steve had said it earlier, and he's right. We got to work through this process.
So y'all are saying the director of the parks more or less initiated this scare, or whatever you want to call it? Or is he the one that started the whole thing?
I'll put it in
The letter came from.
We received a letter from Director Lyon to prepare ourselves for an emergency operations plan, which would include closing some state parks and a process by which we would accomplish that. I never got the impression that DeSoto State Park, we'd wake up one morning, there'd be a close sign on it. It was always seemed to be a process by which we would do it. We haven't developed the details on that yet. It was for me, it was a kind of a preparatory of a worst case scenario that we had to pay attention to. And I haven't spoken to him directly, but he doesn't want it to happen either, but it's kind of, we have to think about it.
But did he dream this, or did somebody tell him something? That's what I'm asking.
Is it the governor? Is that who's proposing this? We're trying to find out where this is
Where it
coming from.
originated, not who sent a letter.
Yeah, he serves at the pleasure of the governor.
Pleasure of the governor.
But
Political appointee.
But let me tell you this too. The first budget that come out of the House, what we tried to do was say, okay, if we don't have any new money, if we don't move any money, if we don't change anything, what kind of cut would it take to do that? It was exactly what we got. And Representative Klaus come back, and it was 11.5% cut. And he might have took from that. I'm not saying, I don't know. But that was just saying, if we're at the funding level that we're at today, what would it take? Or what kind of cuts would it take for the state to operate? Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is something I think needs to be. Somebody asked me about this the other day, and they said, what do you think about this budget crisis? Isn't it terrible? It is bad. It is. But it's also good. That sounds like that's an oxymoron, that's crazy. Let me tell you why it's good. Don't you wish our federal government had to operate like that, where they had to maintain a budget and work within the budget? You know, we wouldn't be in the crisis we're in if that was the case. You know, our dollar would be worth a whole lot more today if that was the case. So it's not a bad thing. It's good that we have to balance a budget. I have to balance one at my house, and I'm pretty sure y'all probably do too. You know? But even though we're going through this issue, and I hope that we will work it out. But think about that. Would it not be good if the federal government set up like that, where they had to balance their budget too? But it's not a bad thing. It's making us do what we need to do. I mean, that's one way I look at it.
Well, I personally am happy to have you representing us because I think you have our best interest at heart. And I really do appreciate both of you representing us in the way you're doing it, and I feel very confident that you do what's best for us.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate all of you coming out today. Thank you very much. We're here to fight for your state parks. We're here to fight for DeSoto. This is God's country.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you.
May 2nd, Wildflower Saturday, alabark.com.
I'm frustrated. Dancing around and stuff.
We don't know any more than we do, and they don't